Harlan's through, he might go for it, still going, trying to barge his way through, goes to the shot, what a goal!
Arriving Rian O'Neill from an almost impossible angle, and that's the rousing score Armagh were looking for.
Conor Turbin kicks this one in on it, absolutely superb.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. We're looking ahead to the final round of the National Football League as Armagh make the long trip down south to Cork and have former Cork footballer and All-Ireland winner Paudie Kissane here to preview the game. So Paudie, I know I was just speaking the offer and sort of from an Armagh perspective, already having gained promotion on a National League final coming up, there's maybe a dead rubber element to this game, but for Cork, as you were just saying, while they're safe from relegation, there's still the chance they could drop into the Halton Cup for this year and be out of the Sam Maguire. So for a Cork perspective, there is a good bit of riding on this game.
There certainly is, because ultimately, while there's a lot of different permutations that may lead to them ending up in the Halton Cup, it's still a possibility. So, and I remember Ian Maguire highlighting it earlier in the week, like that this is the closest thing to a championship game, you know, where ultimately they need to get a result. And I think that's great preparation for Cork for the championship, and also it's also because of the calibre of who they're playing. You know, so it's somewhere they need a result against ultimately Armagh or a top side, like, you know, if they've shown over the last number of seasons. And I think because of that, then I think while Armagh already promoted, I think Kieran McGeeney will know what great test they're going to get. So I think that's a great for them too. Like, even though they're promoted and they have a league final to look forward to, I just think still that's what you want, you know, and particularly because championship is so close. Like, if championship was in the old days, if championship was still 2 months away or 6 weeks away, maybe different, like, but because it's so close, I just think it's great for both sides.
Yeah, the fact, like, there's a lot of discussion about the sort of condensed season and championship being so close to the league, but I suppose that gives Armagh a chance. It's a test for Armagh that they maybe wouldn't get if the league or the championship was further away, because the championship for Armagh, I think it's 3 weeks away, and Cork's championship game is 2. So while Armagh maybe have nothing to play for here, as you said, it's a great test and a good run out before a league final and a first round of the championship.
Yes, like, and see, like, they're playing right. They're playing a team that's got to say they're on a quarter final last year. They're playing a side they're not going to be playing in the Ulster Championship. So, and also they're playing, I suppose, ultimately, like the Páirc Uí Chaoimh venue itself, and please God, the weather will be fairly settled at the weekend. But, you know, it's a kind of a big pitch, fast pitch, you know, so kind of like Croke Park-like conditions, you could say, whereas maybe different to maybe some of their contests early in the year where the weather could be very poor or they're playing in a tighter venue, and that just brings a different type of a challenge. So I just think, as looking forward to the summer or looking forward to the championship in, say, April and May, that's why, again, another reason why it's great preparations from an Armagh point of view, you know.
I think even, Paudie, if Kieran McGeeney does decide to mix things up a wee bit and maybe rest the likes of an Aidan Falker, Rory Grugan, Stephen Campbell, the subs bench that he has to avail of is fairly strong. So, like, even if he does start, say, the subs with the subs the last day out, you still have the 2 O'Neills, Charlie O'Byrnes, the likes of Shane McPartland still there. So, like, even if he does want to rest a few players, Armagh's still going to be going fairly strong, you would imagine.
Well, I think they will. Like, and again, I remember looking back at their game there a few weeks ago against Donegal. Like, and again, as I said, you mentioned Rian O'Neill, Charlie O'Byrne, Stephen Campbell, the likes, a lot of experienced, talented players coming on. So I just think ultimately, again, there's obviously competition for places in the Armagh. Like, the Armagh have a good enough depth to their panel. Like, so ultimately, when, irrespective of, as I say, they might be already promoted, but ultimately championships are around the corner. So if you're getting a start on Saturday night against Cork, well, you're going to be wanting to perform, and then even from an individual perspective, because you're going to want that jersey in a couple of weeks' time come championship, or you want that jersey in 2 weeks' time in the league final. So again, you know, so while I think, yes, Kieran McGeeney and his team can afford to experiment a small bit or try out certain things, or maybe players coming back from injury just needs a certain amount of game time, but when still in that context, because of the competition for places and what's coming down the tracks, I just think you're going to get a very committed and tuned in Armagh side.
And Paudie, I know I was speaking to you offer, as I said, and I had sort of noted down a few times that Armagh and Cork had played, and they don't play that often. I think the last time was 2019, and before that was 2011 and 2012. But you were telling me you've played against Armagh a couple of times, so it's it's not as a unique fixture as I maybe thought it was.
No, but I suppose I'm thinking back over a long period of time, and and again, I remember back when Armagh were Ireland champions, and we played them, I think, in the first round of the National League, and I think it was maybe early February or late January of 03, and obviously then back when when we were going strong ourselves, we were the Ireland champions. I suppose we played Armagh then again in top of my head, I think it was April 11 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and we played them in the Lillick grounds in 12, and I suppose you always look back and then also I think we played them in, I think, 2008 as well, just when Conor Coonan took over as the Cork manager, and so I suppose 3 of those contests were up north, 2 in Crossmaglen, 1 in the grounds, and we'd won in Park. Just great contests. Do you know, kind of like you could never get an easy up in when you're playing Armagh. I suppose they always have like the Crossmaglen or the grounds, tight venues where there might only be a few thousand there, but it feels like there's a lot more there. And very passionate and yeah, great battles. And I suppose ultimately looking back, some good memories, but also just it was just, I suppose, in one sense, a kind of respect there, like, that kind of way that you just had a first battle, and it was just good memories overall.
Do you remember who you were marking any of them days, Paudie? I'm sure it changed every time you played Armagh nearly.
I think way back, I ended up remember marking one of the McEntees, and I remember way back then, like, saying, "Gee, the size of them, like, I was only a young fella now at the time, but obviously strength and conditioning and so on has advanced so much. But remember back then, Armagh were quite, just a quite physical, strong team in itself. And I suppose off the top of my head, I remember we had, was it Malachi Mackin, wasn't it? Was he playing wing forward at one stage? I remember marking him in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and then up. They're just the memories in the top of my head, but ultimately it's just overall, it's just more the collective, just the collective battle and the collective, just great contests. And as I said, fortunately we came out the right way some days, and unfortunately other days maybe we didn't get the result.
I think that 2012 game you were saying about, there was maybe a bit of a skirmish at the start of the game. Both teams, I think that was the first round of the National League, was it?
It might have been the first round, yeah, and yeah, it was in Lillick grounds, and I think it was a close enough game in the end, kind of like a 12-11 or a 13-12 kind of contest. And yeah, there was a bit, I suppose, got a bit heated early on, and it's it was handbags in the end, but ultimately even back then, I suppose Croke Park were trying to stamp out this whole thing of the third man joining and creating melee, and a few lads I think had to head to Croke Park the following week for appeals, but look, it happened, and look, there was no big injuries or anything. But look, I suppose we can look back now and kind of smile a bit about it, but it was just another one of, sometimes when there is that, there would have been, even though we don't play that often, it's still a rivalry there. Ultimately, two teams want to do well, want to win, and it can unfortunately sometimes slightly spill over. But look, that's what happens sometimes, unfortunately.
I suppose Cork now, Paudie, just looking at a few of their recent league games, I think Louth beat them recently, but outside of that, they've won 3 of their 4 league games. So heading into this Saturday evening, their Cork's in fairly good form, and they seem to be scoring fairly well as well.
Yeah, they're good in full form, but I suppose the most pleasing thing of, I think, their last day was that it looked away from home. It looked potentially that Meath were going to get the upper hand coming into the last 10-15 minutes. It was Cork who finished strong. So I think that's the pleasing thing, because you could look at maybe the likes of result against Kildare, where Cork just got on top early in the second half, and maybe Kildare fell away small, but that was just ultimately turns into an easier win, and it's easier to look good and play well. And whereas previous to that, then the next Cork had Cavan at home, where that was a tit for tat game, close, tough game, and ultimately Cavan finished the strongest. So and again, if Cork are looking to progress from last year, you're going to get these close contests that are going to go down to the wire, and it's about staying on track and forget the scoreboard and focus on the performance. And I think that'll be maybe the pleasing thing from the last day, that against me, that they stuck to that, and I suppose you could say they played to the final whistle, and they got the rewards in a tough match. But I suppose the challenge the next day is that it's a step up again. They're playing a team that are a better team than Meath, and that, I think that'll be their mindset. While a result is important regards the standing in the Sam Maguire's Halton Cup, but ultimately till it's great preparation, that it's potentially going to be very close coming down the closing stages, and can Cork still get that result?
And I think just looking through their team lineouts and stuff, Paudie, and their scores, they seem to be scoring well, and I think they've got 4 goals in their last 3 games. And the likes of Connor Corbett, you have Stephen Sherlock there, Brian Hurley. They do seem to have a really solid attack that Armagh will have to be wary of.
They will, like, and I suppose maybe progression from this year, I suppose, is like Connor Corbett is probably starting a bit more. I know he'd be well known for a couple of years ago. He was, well, I suppose, when Cork won the minor Ireland a couple of years back, he would have been picked out as someone potentially as a I suppose you could say, a star of the future. But look, sometimes it doesn't. It's not particularly with minor now, is under 17. It's not a simple transition, but look, he's shown some good form, and I think he scored, it was at 1-3 in the last game, and I think that takes a bit of the, we all know what Brian Hurley's going to bring. We all know what, maybe like even Stephen Sherlock now has maybe had, for different reasons, had a slow start to the league, and he's maybe lost his place in the team. Look, he seems to be coming strong again, and he's always another player that always chips in with a couple of scores. Like, so I think that's maybe a reason why, maybe another reason why Cork maybe are playing that bit better as well, is that there's maybe not an onus on one or two players, but there's more of a greater spread of scores. But I still think, as much as the spread of scores, I think a crucial part to the weekend is how well they defend. And I don't think that's something that has been quite as strong. Maybe it's been inconsistent. Even back to the Kildare game, when they won convincingly, they still conceded 3 goals. And they conceded 2 goals against Louth, and they just, I still think they're conceding a bit more maybe than they'd like to. And I just see that as much as you got to win the game and you got to score. I see that as kind of an interesting angle to the weekend's game, is because if they don't defend well, then that's Armagh, the type of team that they'll put a big score together in a short space of time, and then they're in for a difficult day,
I think in terms of that, Paudie, Armagh's forward line, like, as obviously we're talking, we don't know who's in. Maybe Rian O'Neill will start, and Rory Grugan won't, and Stephen Campbell mightn't start. But the scoreline that Armagh put up the last day, 2-21 against Cavan, who are third in the table. Like, I'm sure Cork will take note of that Armagh have a lot of scoring threat. Oisin Connolly, only new this year, got 4 points. Conor Turbot, I think he got 1-4. You had the likes of Grugan and Campbell chipping in. Rian O'Neill got a point when he come on. So there's a lot of firepower up in that Armagh attack that Cork will be sort of concerned with.
There will, like, and you look at some of the results, like they beat Meath convincingly. I think it was 2-16. They beat Kildare 2-16. They scored, looking here, they beat Cavan 2-21. And I know, again, you have to keep everything in the league in perspective, depending on conditions and what players are lining out. But ultimately, it still shows like that. If you give Armagh a platform, or if you let them get a stranglehold in the game, they have potential to kick a big score. Like, and even as you said, Cavan would have been seen as doing quite well in the league up to that contest last weekend. So, and that's why. And whereas then you look at the game like the Donegal Armagh game, like, where obviously that was more of a I suppose, really tight, tactical, maybe more of a defensive approach, and you see the scoreline was a lot lower. Like, so that's why I see it in this weekend, like, is that I suppose that's an interesting even for Armagh as well, like, that as much as I feel Cork will need to defend better, it's a challenge for Armagh that if Cork bring that better defensive setup, can Armagh get enough scores to actually win the game? Whereas you look at when they don't seem to be able to kick a big score, then they have a big score of a low score. Do you know that kind of way? Whereas they, like, so kind of, that's just an interesting dynamic to the game overall.
I think that was the thing maybe for Armagh against Fermanagh, was they sort of flooded the defence and Armagh couldn't get in to get goals. Now, their firepower told in the end. I think Soupy Campbell, Turbot and Grugan got a few points in a row, and that sort of opened up a wee bit of a gap. But I suppose for Armagh, it's the long journey as well, Paudie, and as you're saying, you've made it up to Crossmaglen on the athletic grounds. I'm not sure if they're staying over Friday night or they're travelling down Saturday morning, but I'm sure that all has an impact during the league when you have to make these long journeys. Whatever, a 4 or 5 hour trip to Cork, it's not the most appealing before a game.
It's not, like, but I suppose I'd imagine, even though it's a Saturday fixture, anytime we went up the north, obviously, we played Armagh, we would have stayed overnight, so travel wasn't an issue. And sometimes when you're going away, there's a benefit to it, like, because ultimately, all right, players are spending more time together. It's easier maybe to have 1 or 2 shorter meetings and so on, just to run over a few things or run over something tactically. So maybe you're not as rushed. So sometimes there can be a benefit to that. And but also, I would imagine now Armagh would probably come down on Friday evening, like, And also I just still think again, like when, like if if you're an Armagh footballer, like you're just looking at this contest at the weekend, and again the proximity championship, I just think you're looking forward, and there's like, you're not looking around saying that for not excuses, but you're not looking for negativity. I just think it's all positive, like, so so I don't see travel as a factor, and yeah, and I just look forward to attending the game.
And there's obviously a league final for Armagh next weekend as well, and a big day out in Croke Park against Donegal. And Paudie, I know you have a couple of National League medals to your name during your career, and there's a lot of talk at the minute just about the condensed season and people maybe looking rid of league finals. And I know from an Armagh perspective, well, from an Armagh fans perspective anyway, that winning a national title and silverware in Croke Park is something that Armagh wouldn't turn down at this stage, and I'm sure Jim McGuinness and Donegal wouldn't turn it down either. And I think it's maybe okay for the likes of Kerry and Dublin to say, yeah, do away with league finals. We win them every year, sort of thing. But for a lot of other teams out there, and Cork included, Derry in Division 1, there's a lot of counties that do want league finals, and it's a good chance to get some silverware.
Yeah, certainly. Look, and I would agree. Probably it's probably a bit too close, this kind of the gap between league to championship for some teams. But that aside, you mentioned my time back. Yes, like look, the Sam Maguire ultimately is what's important, and thankfully, we had that opportunity, or we did get over the line in 2010, but still, when you look back at joining the dots between the progression from or getting to that point to be able to win the Sam Maguire, winning those leagues was important. Because ultimately, if you're winning leagues, and that time I think that in some of those years it was league semi-finals as well. Like, so you're winning a league semi-final in Croke Park, you're winning a league final in Croke Park, and back then, there was less opportunities potentially of playing in Croke Park, depending on how the championship went. So there was less rounds to the overall championship. So I think for us, or for me, it was very important. Like, you were winning titles in Croke Park. Obviously, you get that stage winning finals. The first year maybe it was Division 2 in 08, but not, it was the Division 1 league final. So you were beating a good side every year in Croke Park as well. So I thought it was massive for us. And even though there would have been a gap to championship, but still, just from a confidence point of view, or come later down the track, you're back in that same moment, like where you're coming down the closing stages, and you've been here before, and you've won the contest, even though it might have been league, but it still stands to you. And I still think, even both from, say, like you mentioned Armagh's example, like I suppose they've had a few I suppose, what could you say, unlucky, but they've lost in penalties. Is it last year they lost in penalties to Monaghan in the quarterfinal? Am I right? And the year before they lost to Galway, wasn't it, in penalties as well? So like, they're when they think back to Croke Park, like it's going to be, they're thinking back, it's been a negative experience, like, and they haven't been able to close it out. So like, if they're looking to progress this year, then they'll want to be. I think they'll want to be pushing strong. To perform well the following week in Croke Park and beat Donegal, even though they know both sides could be meeting a few weeks later in the Ulster Championship. But look, I just think they'll, who knows? We're only speculating, but look, I just think at the time when that contest comes around, they'll want to win it.
Yeah, I think I can't see Armagh or Donegal not wanting to win it when they're already there. And as you say, big day out in Croke Park, and Armagh's memories of Croker aren't great at the minute, so banishing a few of them would do no harm. But where do you see Armagh at the minute, Paudie? Just before I let you go, I suppose from an Armagh perspective, a league final and a league title would be great, and hopefully an Ulster final and maybe an Ulster title as well. But I suppose in the wider scheme of things, on the All-Ireland stage, where do you rank Armagh at the minute in terms of top contenders?
I suppose ultimately, I don't see them as being far away, to be honest. Ultimately they'd have been very disappointed about how last year ended up in losing to Monaghan. Like, they would have seen themselves the year before losing the Ireland semi-final to Galway, and they would have seen obviously Galway push Kerry to the pin of their collar, and I think Armagh would have seen themselves as, like, we'd see ourselves in a similar level to Galway. Obviously we've a bit to go to contend for the Sam Maguire, but not too far away at the same time. And I think maybe, like, they came back last year and they're kind of like, they were trying to get a balance in how they were playing between, the way you need to attack well to win the game, but you need to defend well. And maybe at times they were trying out different tactics, and maybe ultimately the balance might have been wrong, and trying to be kind of, not to say over defensive, but the way maybe did it because they were trying to improve themselves defensively, or improve their game management, maybe lost a bit of their attacking flair or their attacking threat. So I just think that if they can get that balance right, like you look at the top teams, you look at obviously you look at straight away who we think got our Kerrys and Dublins, like that they're putting up the big scores. This is over the last couple of years when they're Ireland's, but also they're obviously defending quite solid at the same time. And I think that's going to be the balance for Armagh. I think they've huge potential, but it's just getting that balance between being defensively strong and solid while also being able to kick the big scores. Because if you look at the results, you're not winning the Ireland scoring 9, 10, 11 scores. You look at, I think, off the top of my head, you look at Kerry and, as I said, Dublin, and they're probably scoring 17, 18 scores. And there's probably potentially there's a goal at least or goal or two in that score line as well. So I think that's the, huge potential. But and I suppose that's why you reflect back at this weekend again like that. I kind of feel Cork, it's a challenge. I think they'll need to bring a better defensive performance, and then if Cork bring that, it's just for me then to see then, within that structure, then how well are Armagh able to kick a big enough score within that, So look, time will tell, but look, they're in the mix, and but as I said, with the Ulster Championship, that takes off a life of its own. So they have a lot of work to do there yet before we ever think about what might happen down the line.
Yeah, definitely, Paudie. And I know we're talking about Armagh and the team travelling down. I know there's a big Armagh fan base travelling down for the weekend too. And there's a hurling game on in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. First, I think Limerick and Kilkenny are playing at 4:30 in the hurling semi-final. So, any Armagh fans listening, just make sure that you get down good and early, and parking and everything else that goes along with it, and a few pints maybe before heading into the game. But that's a great semi-final to look forward to as well for a curtain raiser. But Paudie, it was great to hear from you, and hopefully there's a big Armagh crowd down in Cork on Saturday evening, and we'll get a good game and a good contest.
No bother, it was a pleasure, and not too big an Armagh crowd now, to be honest, because ultimately that might make life a small bit harder for the Cork lads. But but look, it will be. Look, as I said, I think even just speaking to different people over the week or whatever, there's a lot of people just looking forward to the game. You can see this time of year now that I know the weather's been poor recently, but the summer isn't too far away, or there's a stretch in the evenings, and championship is only around the corner. So yeah, it is. It's just a keenly awaited contest, even though there mightn't be as much at stake as we think.
Yeah, good stuff, Paudie. Cheers for that. Thanks very much.
Okay. No bother. Pleasure. Okay, thank you.
Summit Harlan's through. He may go for it. Still going. Trying to barge his way through. Goes to the flat. What a goal!
Arriving Rian O'Neill from an almost impossible angle. And that's the rousing score Armagh we're looking for.
Turbot kicks this one in on an absolutely superb